really glad to have you all here. Just a very quick introduction from us, our side as well. So you'll also see Morgan here. Morgan, I don't know if you want to give a quick intro. Oh, you're on mute.
Hey everyone, my name is Morgan. I am the president of National Student Network. Really glad to be on this call to hear everything that Owen has in store for CIPFA. This is great.
Fantastic, thanks Morgan. And yeah, I'm the vice president for the CIPFA Student Network as well. So with that, thanks very much, Owen, over to you.
And firstly, thank you so much for the invitation. Really pleased to be doing this and really happy to keep it live and flexible. So if there are things you want me to talk about that I'm not, please pop it in the chat. I'm also delighted to say I brought a friend with me that I recognise that there could be some tricky questions that I just can't answer. So I thought let's bring a real expert on all things about membership and education. So rather than me introduce her, Lindy, do you want to say hello early doors?
Yeah, thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lindy Engelbrecht. I'm the Director for Members in Education. Some of you might have seen me at previous sessions, but yes, happy to answer any questions that you have today.
Thanks so much for joining with me. Lindy, 2 for the price of 1, just like the dual membership. So a few early comments from me about, I was asked to talk about my career journey and then a few things about CIPFA. So before I even start talking about career journey, I just want to re-emphasise how excited I still am to be working in this amazing profession. And so for those of you who are putting in the hard yards to learn and juggle work and study, it's so worth it. Because as finance professionals, I absolutely think we hold a skeleton key to our organisations, whether that be about affordability, helping draw the link and a bridge between strategy and operational delivery, as value for money champions, as probity and ethics guardians, as reporters of the accurate truth, as assurers. You know, we've got the right and the professional obligation to roam free across our organisations, providing challenge insights, support as partners, but also where necessary as bold tellers of inconvenient truths. And that combination of stuff, I think, I still think, I was going to say how many years into my career, but a few now, I still think is a completely intoxicating challenge and opportunity. And it's a real privilege, I think, to work in such an influential profession. I'll touch on a bit later that clearly that profession is changing, 'twas ever thus, and it will continue to change. But whatever happens from the science fiction of AI through to assaults on public services we're seeing in some parts of the world, I think that the role of good quality, flexible, ambitious, hungry for learning finance professionals will remain at the heart of public service for generations to come. So I still congratulate you on your career choice and stick with it, even if it feels tough. So for me, it all went back to me because at the start of my career, because I had literally no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so I figured that if I trained as an accountant, that would be a good general business qualification and something was likely to pop up. And so for me, that started, I was an accountant at a firm called PW, doesn't exist anymore, Price Waterhouse. And looking back, I learned all of my core skills there that I've put in my toolkit I've drawn over the years. So financial management, so I qualified as a chartered accountant. Relationship building, absolutely critical. Problem identification and iteration, and just constantly chipping away at, what is the exam question here? What are we trying to achieve? So I think that was seriously important. Also, I spent time in PwC after I qualified in a sort of training and development style function, firstly internally, brainwashing the new graduates, but then in a sort of client-facing role. And I realised that I learned a lot of skills there about narrative and storytelling and presentations and so on. And so I think for all of us working in finance, we work sometimes with quite technical information. But if we keep it exclusively technical, that's quite exclusive. And our role is to translate that and find ways of talking about the things that we are responsible for in ways that everybody can understand. So I think that finance is only complicated, complex, technical if we allow it to be so. And there's loads more situations where it doesn't need to be like that. So I would encourage you to absolutely get really solid technical foundations for your work, both through the studies, but also through your application in your roles. But always be looking for ways to convert that into the sort of narrative that your colleagues outside finance roles will understand. That if you bumped into a resident or a user of your services, whatever type of organisation you're in, you could talk about it in layperson's terms. So I think I learned all of that in my career at PwC. Chapter 2 for me, I moved into the civil service in Westminster in the UK, worked as a central government finance lead. And that was because by my early 30s, I'd worked out that really what I wanted to do in life was I wanted to be an agency finance director. So an agency being the sort of delivery arm of government. That was an organisation that got stuff done, operational delivery, because that's what spoke to me. And some of my observations from the civil service is just at that time, which was a long time ago now, just insufficient understanding of each other's systems. As certainly I learned that when moving from central government to local government, that there just was these big silos. And I now look back, I've said this on a few occasions, that I look back with a combination of sort of pain and embarrassment about the pretty toxic combination of ignorance and arrogance that I had strutting around Whitehall. I thought I was, big dog working on the big politics of the day. And when I now think about NHS or local government, I just didn't understand enough about it. And I thought that my work was superior. What a load of nonsense. And so the reason I say that is to just challenge you to be thinking about, are you guilty at any stage, certainly of the ignorant side, hopefully I'm sure not the arrogant side, but increasingly the work that we all do in public service is about systems and working with partners, whether that's health and care or education and central and local or international work. It's all done in systems ways of thinking. So my challenge is, what are you doing to stand back from your day-to-day roles and really think about how your organisation, your work works in partnership with others? Because if you're not trying to learn that overall, then I think you're missing out. I also learned about the difference between different styles of politics when I was in central government. You just worked with the elected administration, nothing to do at all with the opposition. I then moved into local government and I realised, well, no, you've got to deal with all of the politicians, whether they're in the administration or they're in opposition. And that was absolutely the case when I was a board member in the NHS as well, that failure to understand how politics, both big and little p, affects all decisions. I think whatever type of organisation you're working in, you've really got to think about what the political setup is. And it's not just those who are currently holding the reins of power you've got to be thinking about. It's the postures, the policies, the thinking of all politicians. So then chapter 3 for me, as I say, I moved into local government and absolutely loved that sense of direct delivery, that all public service is important. But for me personally, I found that just getting stuff done, I did that more in local government rather than in central government when I was responsible for systems as a whole rather than direct delivery. And then for me, the move into CIPFA was because I wanted to keep learning, and I'd loved my time in each of those previous sectors, but I knew I wanted to do something a bit different. And CIPFA was a systems role rather than an operational delivery role. And I thought that was an opportunity to just keep learning. So a couple of other things about my career plan. I just didn't have one. As I told you, I started because I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. At one stage in my PwC days, I was like, oh, that's it, I'm a trainer. Is that what I had in mind? And I thought that was what I'd do for the rest of my career. What a load of nonsense that was as well. Careers are no longer linear. They weave and change and opportunities pop up. And so my career rules as I was developing were, number one, am I likely to enjoy this? And that was so important to me because we spend so much of our lives at work. Number two, will I learn something new? Will I keep developing? And number three, particularly as I moved more into public service because I started in private sector, is it worth doing? And that worth is such a personal evaluation, but was it worth it to me? Does this need doing and doing well? Why do I share that with you? Because those were my career rules. What are yours? And if you haven't spent any time thinking about it, then I think it would be worth spending a bit of time thinking about how you navigate your careers. They're unlikely to be linear, just A to B. So what are the principles, what are the thoughts that you should be applying to yours? As I say, I've shared mine, but it's deeply personal. So what are yours? A couple of tips from me that I've picked up along the way, that sort of posture in your roles, that if you want to progress, get stuck in. If you don't, if you're quite happy, then I'm delighted. There's no judgment from me that I've constantly pursued the next thing, because that's just the nature of my personality. I'm hungry to learn more and do more and develop and so on. But if you want to progress, if you want to develop, then just get involved and volunteer for things, take risks. Does that need extracurricular activity? Well, yeah, it does. But then you're already expert at that in the way that you juggle your studies and your work. But if you're the sort of person who goes, well, no, I just want to do my 9 to 5, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to really keep learning, then that commute, you could be reading the latest Slow Horses book, because I've just finished number 4, love it. Or you could also be reading about things you don't understand more, or don't understand. So I've recognised that I walk through life looking through the eyes of a middle-aged white man. That is my frame of reference. I've got a vicarious experience of others. I'm married to a fantastic white lady, and she gives me her view of the world. I've got 2 teenagers who give me their view of the world. But I just can't, I didn't know enough, I still don't know enough about what it is to be a woman in the workplace. So I've read about menopause, I've talked to people, I've learned more. I don't know what it is to be in a minority ethnic group. And so I've worked really hard to learn more about ethnicity and diversity and so on. And that's a choice. And if you want to learn more, then I would encourage you to think outside your own immediate forms of reference, to just get more from other perspectives, because it's absolutely clear that EDI is under attack. And it now needs people at all levels of leadership to go, no, I think you'll find that there's still massive inequalities in our society, particularly with us public service providers. We see it. We still see there's massive inequalities in terms of progression opportunities, and there's underrepresented groups who've got talent who are not progressing. So yeah, we could just cowtail and say, yeah, no, let's either quietly or noisily get rid of all of our focus on EDI, or we could say, no, my focus is that's an integral part of my leadership, and I'm proud to continue doing that. So I'd encourage you to do exactly the same if that's what you believe. But to do that, you've got to invest and learn outside your own frames of reference. And that can be done in all sorts of ways, not just reading books, but talking to people, experiencing other things, listening, learning, etc. What else would I say? Tips on presenting. You'll be presenting all the time, whether you know it or not. So some of that will be formal in situations like this, or at a board meeting, or at a conference, or something. And so, of course, there are things that you can do about preparation and so on. But you're always on show. And so one of my things to encourage you to be would be to think about, how am I perceived by others? A technique that I've often used with people either in line management and end of year appraisals or in coaching is, if I was to ask you to write down what words the people around you would describe you as in terms of your style, and then think about those words and go, are those the words I'd want them to be using? If not, why not? And how can I change my approach to get them to be using the words that I'd want them to be using? So really think about yourself as a presenter all the time, because whether you like it or not, you are on show all the time, and people will be forming judgments of you. And as you get more senior, that will just get bigger and bigger. And so I won't ask for a show of hands, but without suggesting I'm anything special, just by dint of my role, then most of you, I would guess, have some kind of impression of me even before this session started, whether it was somebody who'd seen me do something, or you'd seen a LinkedIn post from me, or you've heard me talk. You'd be forming a judgment, and most of you I've never met. So you've got to get comfortable with the fact that people you'll never meet will form judgments about you, and literally everything you do will be impacting on those judgments. So it's not self-obsessed, it's sensible to be thinking about, what sort of projection do I want to be having on the outside world, on those around me? Because that to me is leadership, the influence you have on those around you. And that is like, it's not such a culturally relevant reference anymore, but the Dementors in Harry Potter that literally suck the life energy out of everything around them. That is pretty infectious. And it's pretty negative, I would say. But the opposite of that is equally infectious. And so what sort of impact do you want to have on those around you? Do you want to be open to support other people's learning? Do you want to be inquisitive? Do you want to be energetic? That's not everybody has the same styles. I'm a big believer in you can have introverts and extroverts and thinkers and reflectors as well as ta-da merchants. But absolutely, whatever your personal style, you'll be having an impact on those around you. And so spend some time thinking on those around you. A couple of other things, and then we'll open it up into a conversation, because I think that's what this is badged as. So it's not a conversation if I just bang on for the whole session. So how have I found joining CIPFA? What an unbelievably interesting organisation it is. It is really small. I thought it was huge. It's small but mighty, and it has fingers in lots of pies. It has big influence. But a big challenge for us, I'll be completely frank with you, is how do we make sure that it stays relevant and interesting in a rapidly changing world? We are smaller than other organisations. We punch above our weight. But the way that I think that we're going to stay relevant is by putting out interesting, relevant content, is by having networks that are vibrant and alive, by recognising that the world is changing rapidly around us, so we need to change as well. What's our posture about the role of AI on accountancy generally and the individual practitioners who are both training and post-qualified? How do we adapt our offer to ensure that we're still having CPD and other things that help practitioners navigate that rapidly changing journey? Sustainability is a massive area, and it's got both technical elements. How do you report on sustainability progress and commitments? But how do you provide assurance as well? And that's another thing for tech and AI. Do we want to just leave it all to the tech pros in California, or do we want to be the profession that says, no, can we just check with integrity that this is working the way that it should be, that we can rely on that sort of data? So I'll give those as a couple of examples of the things that I think CIPFA needs to be doing to continue to evolve to respond to the changing world around us. That's one of the reasons why I'm so pleased that we're working in such close partnership with our friends and colleagues in the ICAW. Because I think that they are bigger than us. They've got all sorts of corporate experience, and they see in us the value of public sector expertise, because most GDPs are 40% public sector. So there's an obvious link there. But as I've proved, and I'm certainly not special, careers are no longer linear. People will spend time in different sectors doing different things. And so we think by working really closely together, we can provide breadth and flexibility, and we can get the best of both in a really compelling package. So it's still relatively early days in that partnership, and we're still working out how to make the most of it. We're still navigating our way through what the dual membership is and could be. But I think that we both have the same core elements of integrity, ethics, technical excellence, but we bring slightly different areas of expertise around the sort of sectors that we focus on. So I'm really excited about continuing to work with ICAW colleagues to see how we can make the offer as compelling as possible, because if you want to come into a profession and stay in a profession, it's got to be a really mutually compelling value proposition, both for the student, the institute, and the profession as a whole. So hopefully I've touched on things that are kind of relevant. But Susanna, I suggest that I sort of pause and then open it up either for comments, questions on what I've said, requests to talk about things I haven't said, and as I say, delighted to have Lindy on board, because she can give you her perspective as well if helpful.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Owen. Really, really insightful. I think it's such a key point about always keeping learning and valuing your own development, and just really interesting tips. I think, we don't necessarily always think about how we're being perceived by others, and having that in mind, I think, is a really interesting point that people don't always make. And yeah, really, really great point also, just to be thinking about us as finance professionals demystifying finance for the layperson. It's so important, and all of us as students have to mark off our communication thing on our apprenticeships or our qualifications, and it might be a bit of a chore to write it up, but actually when you mark your progress, you are saying I'm becoming better at helping people to understand finance. So it's such a key part of what we do. So I am going to open up to questions. So if people want to put any questions that they have for Owen or for Lindy about ICAW in the chat, that would be great. And we can kick off with that. I had one's come through already. So Amy has asked, any advice for CIPFA students about ethics and integrity? So how do you ensure you maintain your integrity and core values as you rise through the ranks? I think that's a really important question, especially in the current climate.
Absolutely. So what a good question. And I also love the fact that this isn't just reserved for like really senior leaders, because I think this goes to the heart of what we're doing, because it doesn't go without saying, I'll say it anyway, ethics and integrity are at the heart of our profession. It is so fundamental to the professionalism and the trust that we wield as professionals and as financial management practitioners. It could come at any stage, whatever type of work you're doing. If you spot something, you think, that's just not right. It's on you to find a way to discuss it with somebody. Another top tip, I learned this from our head of EDI at Herts County Council. She taught me the difference between calling in and calling out. And so if you call something out, you could be in a meeting, somebody says something, and you sort of call it out there and then, no, sorry, that's completely unethical. I'm not having that. And I'd argue that's probably quite a tricky thing to do. I know you're not going to have a great relationship with that person going forwards. Calling in could be after the meeting. Sarah, can we just have a bit of a chat about that thing? I've just got a few concerns. And you can then take it somewhere else, but you've had that chat. Another example I would give is go right to the other end of my career. When I was chief exec, there was occasionally councillors who would get quite passionate about their view, and I had some sympathy. They were probably getting it in the neck from residents, but they were using tone and language in responding to officers that I just didn't think was right. And so if you just flip it round, and if I or any of my colleagues spoke to a councillor in that sort of tone, they wouldn't have it. So for me, it was my integrity as a senior leader to find a way to go and speak to that councillor and say, in fact, I even printed out 2 pages worth of their emails and say, can I just invite you to read this? Are you comfortable that this is the sort of tone we're setting in the organisation? Because we know we're all working really hard, and bottom line, I'm just not having this. And so I had to call it in and say, no, I'm not having it. And one other thing I'd say is, and I use this example a lot, I talk about telling truth to power, and we often think of ourselves exclusively as the truth tellers. That we go and tell a senior leader, oh no, this is not on, and it takes bravery and so on. Absolutely right. But at any point in your career, typically as you get more senior, but at any point, you could be the power that the truth is being told to. So what is your reaction to that? Are you welcoming questioning from others? Are you reacting like immediately and negatively or defensively? Or are you, interesting, just tell me more, let me understand more. And so all of those sorts of things will create the sort of atmosphere and tone around you through which progressive professional conversations can be had. So it is true the stakes rise as you get more senior, and so potentially it gets harder, but the same principles of, is this right? Can I link it back to these rules? Do I think the wrong thing is being done here or money's being wasted? You've got to find a way of having an appropriate conversation, but really think through what is the appropriate way of raising this, and blurting it out or directly challenging somebody is usually not the right way of doing it. But thank you for the question, Amy. Always tricky to go first, and hopefully that's helpful.
Thanks, Owen. We're just waiting for a couple more questions coming through. So I have one in the meantime, which possibly might not make very much sense, but you sort of touched on AI, and also we're talking about the changing finance offer going forward. So suppose the question is, how do you see what finance has to offer changing, partly as a result of AI, but just also in a changing landscape? Like what's going to change about what we offer?
Yeah. So I don't know is the honest answer, because there's such a weird combination of science fiction, snake oil, confident predictions that how will it actually pan out? I don't know. But it's already clear it's going to be transformative. Now, to a certain extent, 'twas ever thus, that it's before your time, but I've used this in conference speeches a few times, that I vividly remember in the late 90s and the latest version of Excel came out, and we were like, oh my God, like mind blown. I used to like literally, when I was an early auditor, add up columns of numbers with my calculator and put a little cast sign at the bottom to confirm it was added up correctly. So thank goodness technology means that none of you will be doing that. So does that mean that my role as an auditor went? No, it just means it changed. So my big challenge back to you all would be, what are you doing to try and learn about some of these new technologies? How are you incorporating it into your practice? How are you staying hungry for new ways of doing things? I'll give you one example. I don't think you should all go on the internet and download dodgy things onto your corporate accounts, but I bet most of you are Microsoft houses. And so Copilot, I think, is awesome. But the amount of reading I've got to do of new reports that come out, and do I read them all? Of course I don't. I just go straight onto the Copilot sidebar and say, hey, Copilot, summarize this for me in 300 words. And it's amazing. But even more, it then turns into follow-up questions. Would you like more about how this is going to be implemented? Well, yes, please. And you can have a conversation with that report. My goodness, that is mind-blowing. So if you're not actively trying to learn about some of these new things, then I think you're going to get left behind. And so we will find out more in the next year, 2 years, 5 years about how it's going to change things in the finance landscape. But I remain utterly convinced that it'll be finance practitioners using technology that is a bigger threat to you than the technology itself. So if you're not one of the ones who are really trying to crack on and learn about using the technology, then I think you'll get left behind.
So true. Thanks, Owen. I suppose a big part of that going forward and embracing that is going to be sort of really looking at the professional skepticism part of our apprenticeships and qualifications to, you know, make sure we're still looking with a critical eye. Another question's come up about the potential changes to apprenticeships by the Labour government. So do you have any comments about that?
I do, and Lindy, I'll bring you in as well, because I know you and your team have been really working on this. So I think I'm really, really worried about this, that we can see that over recent years, a strong entry route into the profession has been level 7 apprenticeships. And so I understand that the government has a bit concerned that their original policy intent of addressing inequalities and providing routes for people into professions and learning and training is absolutely desirable. And what have we seen? A whole bunch of, I don't know, middle managers doing MBAs. That wasn't what the intention was. So I can see why they want to change it. But if the way they change it means that it sort of cuts off people coming into public finance, well, that's not what they're after. And so I'm optimistic that our and lots of other people's lobbying has made them realise that that wouldn't be a desirable outcome. But equally, if that does happen, then we'll have to find ways of evolving and changing and having entry routes into the profession. So, Lindy, do you want to say a few words about what we've been up to and your perspective on the same question?
Yeah, thanks, Owen. Quite right. I mean, we are very concerned about this. And, you know, while Owen is right, government believed that their original intention around introducing apprenticeships hadn't actually met those intended objectives. You know, we've shown, we've got the statistics, we've done the research, and we were actually able to show that apprenticeships have in fact introduced some equality and some access to people that previously would not have had the access into professions. So we've written several letters, we've got comment letters, we've participated in various forums with Skills England to try and address and put our point forward. You know, whilst private sector will be affected, public sector is going to be hugely impacted by this, because our employers are not in a position necessarily to be able to still continue to contribute towards the skills levy, but then not be able to draw down from it. And they will then have to pay for their apprentices and for their trainees out of a separate pocket of funding that may or may not be available, and in most cases may not be available. So whilst we've lobbied on the one side, as Owen said, we've had to look at what are the alternatives for us in terms of providing different levels of apprenticeships. We've actually even looked at writing our own standard, so that we can have a level 6 or a level 5 apprenticeship, and then just top up to a level 7. And there's still a lot of things in flux that we need to look at, and that we're trying to ascertain. The obvious answer is to double down on level 4, which is the really entry level apprenticeships. But the gap between a level 4 apprentice and where you want to be when you're fully qualified at a level 7 is significant. We are also working with our employers to come up with commercial packages so that students and learners can still be on an apprenticeship program, very importantly with the wraparound support that the apprenticeship program provided. Previously we had a lot of commercial students, but we never had that support element. And I think that is the one area out of the apprenticeship program that we've seen has worked really well. So we'll be working with employers to see how we can come up with a viable commercial package for them to still put people through a training program and achieve the qualifications that they need. We are looking at level 5 and level 6 at this stage as well. But time will tell. We are unfortunately expecting the announcement quite soon. And all indications at this stage is still that the level 7 funding will be completely cut, or the ability to draw down for level 7. And as Owen said, because there have been instances where it has been used incorrectly, and some of the unintended consequences around that. But we will keep you posted. Fact of the matter is that anybody who is on an apprenticeship program now will continue to be funded and will continue their program and will complete it within the time frame set. So there will be no change for people on program. It will merely be a change for people that wish to start an apprenticeship during this year.
Thanks, Lindy.
Great, thanks, Lindy, on that. I think people will feel reassured on their own behalves, but also it's really great to hear what CIPFA is doing to lobby for some changes to be made, and also what the contingency plans are. It's really positive to hear, because I know so many organisations really value having their apprentices. Next question, loads of questions coming through now, so thanks everyone. I'm going to be democratic and just work through them one by one. So Megan's asked, how do you anticipate that job prospects will alter following the planned devolution in England? I think there's a wider question about, the CIPFA accountant in a devolved state and the whole local government reorganisation here. Thanks, Owen.
Yep. So, don't know. We're going to see how that evolves over time. But again, over the course of your careers, things will change regularly. Whether that be through government policy, whether that be through your own desire to try something new. And so my encouragement would be that there are people who will thrive in that situation. Well, no, let me rephrase that. I think that in any period of uncertainty, those who are better able to navigate uncertainty, ambiguity, complexity, and remain professional, upbeat, confident, looking for the positives, they are likely to find themselves in the best position they possibly can be. I absolutely think that when I look across public service, there are not enough public financial management practitioners working. You just have to look at the number of vacancies, and particularly as I get up to more senior levels, the pipelines have been quite challenging, and so we've got to really work on retaining the attractiveness of the profession and the interest, because it is a tough time at the moment in public service. There's a lot going on, and the funding is constrained and the demands are high. So I have a responsibility, everybody has a responsibility to keep preaching about the just unbelievable value of a career in public finance. So there may well be changes. There may be things that are abrupt and you think, oh, blimey, I was hoping to do that and things have changed. All right, well, you now need to do something different. And so the people who respond positively and so on, I think, again, will be in a better position. So I can't give any guarantees. In some areas, of course, there will be changes and there will be reduced numbers of roles. But I think the way that you respond will have a massive impact on the opportunities for the future. But I'll come back to what I said earlier. Careers are no longer linear. Stuff will happen. But if you demonstrate a continued hunger for learning, a continued desire to be flexible, then I reckon that that you'll be all right.
Brilliant, thanks, Owen. I think with all this change coming, the revision's very slow, possibly for the business change module that we will have to study, but I think it's going to end up coming in useful in the coming years for those of us in local government. So next question's from Emily.
Sorry, can I also insist, we often focus on local government, and my work with NHS trusts, they change every 5 minutes in terms of how the NHS is structured. Yeah. And look at central government and machinery of government changes and international changes. So I think that is just the way of the world. And even when it is challenging, how we react is more important than just the fact in and of itself.
Absolutely. Thanks, Owen. So we've got a question from Emily here, which comes back to AI, which is how would you suggest we reconcile the detrimental environmental impact of AI with keeping up with the latest technology, especially coming back to the discussion on ethics and professional skepticism?
Yeah, I completely agree. So at a sort of macro level, it's been a bit of a dirty secret, isn't it? Just the sheer volume of energy and water and so on that is used. Anybody who came to PF Live last year, and if you don't come to PF Live, why not? Come on, it's an amazing conference. The amazing Dr. Stephanie Hare did a presentation setting all this out. A lot of this is just outside our personal bailiwick. So this is happening. And so the role of the profession has got to be around shining a light on things and accurate reporting. And so I think we need to be getting more into sustainability reporting. So the sustainability reporting of AI is currently lagging behind atrociously. And of course, with all the money being poured into it, it's in their interest to keep it a bit under the radar. But I think it goes absolutely to the heart of our profession. You spot things, you call them out. So I haven't got an easy or a glib answer for you because I recognise it is massively damaging, but it is happening. And hopefully with the changes that we are seeing, then there will be ways of doing it in a more environmentally sustainable way. But as a minimum, we should be flagging the environmental costs of it so that they can be considered as the world uses it.
Absolutely. I think we need to pull in the AI developers to this discussion and really bring them into the sustainability of the practice. So there's a question from Sarah here about being an older CIPFA student. So career changer in my 40s and looking forward to another couple of decades of work. Any advice for older CIPFA students who might question whether their desire for career longevity is truly believed or appreciated by sometimes younger colleagues?
So what a fantastic question, and thank you for the frankness and openness that you've shared there. What can you control? That's often what I think about in my career, and I can't control what other people think. I can just control about what I bring to the table and what sort of attitude and what sort of relationships I'm trying to develop. And so I think the energy, the bravery, the motivation you've already demonstrated by making this career change stand you in fantastic stead. So if there are people who don't take you seriously because of your age, I think that's their problem, and that's going to hold them back. And so what you bring to the table is what you are able to control. And so I would just say exactly the same sort of principles that I've talked about earlier. If you can stay hungry for learning, if you can think about your posture, how you present yourself to the world, then I think you will go far. And you won't be alone, because the way it's going with pensions, we're all going to be working until we're 85 anyway. So I think the workplace is going to have to adapt to get used to that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Owen. So moving on, we've got 15 minutes left and lots of questions coming through. So keen to crack on.
I'll keep them short.
So are CIPFA evaluating how it can be more of a global organisation with more internationally relevant course content as the only public sector accountancy educator?
Yes. So a few more words. We already do way more than you probably realise. We work with tens and tens of countries, doing everything from CIPFA qualifications through to specific courses. So things like anti-corruption and counter-fraud initiatives, working with everybody from the UN to the World Bank. It's a tricky time at the moment with the abolition of US aid and the destruction that's going on there. But absolutely, I'm clear, again, back to my vision for CIPFA, working in partnership with others is a key part of the strategy. And so whether that be with other professional accountancy organisations or the global body IFAC, or with accountant and auditor generals from around the world, we're already doing loads. We're going to continue to do more. And because of the time, I won't bring her in, but Lindy is leading a brilliant piece of work at the moment to develop a foundational qualification for developing economies, where just improving public financial management capabilities is desirable, even if it doesn't then lead on to full CIPFA sort of qualification. So we are already doing loads. I absolutely want us to do even more internationally.
That's really exciting to hear. One person has flagged underneath sort of, this is a call of lots of students. So our SPFM module could have more of an international take. I wonder if that's something that could, be passed on back, and we may, as CSN, pass it on back to the exams team and the education team, just to talk about whether or not
it's a great shout. It's a great shout. I'm really good buddies with our excellent exec director of education and membership, and so I will make sure. Oh, she's right here to hear it directly. So we hear you, and Lindy's heard it loud and clear. Thank you.
Fantastic. So our next question is from Mariam. How do you maintain motivation and energy in a challenging public sector role, particularly when your decisions directly affect those you serve? So how can we as emerging professionals contribute to driving innovation within government? So it's a double question, but fairly interlinked.
So let me do the first bit first. Yeah, what a good question. And I think it does require us to occasionally step back and go, it's hard, isn't it? It really is. And so what are your approaches to personal resilience? From my conversations with my teenagers, it's crystal clear to me that concepts of well-being and mental health are just come more naturally to my teenage generation than possibly my generation. But I've learned that I'm at my best when I am exuding energy, and I've learned over the years what subtracts from my energy, and I've developed really deep roots. I've learned techniques and tools and so on to recognise the signs and what I need to do to stay resilient, motivated, and so on. What you do will be personal to you, but my advice would be, particularly as you progress in your career, it's so easy to just go, I've just got to work this evening, or just this weekend, or just do these emails on holiday because of this specific thing. And that can accumulate before you know it. And careers are long, and you as a person is more important than you as a worker. And so just look out for whatever the signs are that you're feeling a bit under pressure, or it's all getting a bit overwhelming, and just whatever works for you. Talk to your friends, walk your dog, get in the gym, read a slow horses book, whatever it is, just be alive to it, and talk to your buddies would be my simple one. How do we contribute to driving innovation within government? I don't know, get involved, share your ideas, network with amazing societies like the Student Society, show curiosity, see what you can learn. I didn't say earlier, I should have banged on about networking. Networking is so important. I used to think that that was for greasy salespeople who sort of thrust business cards in hands at conferences. What a load of nonsense that was. No, networking is showing an interest in other people, is following up that interest, being curious about what goes on elsewhere. So another test for you, whatever job you're doing in the organisation you're currently doing it, I bet you there's somebody doing a very similar job in a similar sort of organisation. And I bet you could find out just by a little look through LinkedIn. And if you got a message on LinkedIn saying, hey, Susanna, I see that you're the, making it up now, capital accountant in adults and children's services in a council. Well, blimey, I'm doing something similar in another council. Any chance we could just have a quick Teams call and catch up? I bet you'd go, well, that's proactive and impressive. Well, Bally, yes, I'll have that conversation. So what are you doing, each of you, to think about how you're growing your networks, sharing experiences and so on? Because I've got to tell you, of all the skills I've learned in my career, the ability to build and then use relationships is the number one thing that has sustained my career throughout. And it still keeps coming back now. Went to the Liverpool Central Government Conference a couple of weeks back. Oh my goodness, the number of people I hadn't seen for a while, but it was so easy to go, hey, how's it going? Because I'd worked on those relationships, and so should you. Sorry, that wasn't short.
No, fantastic. And I'm going to put a plug in here, and Owen, I'm sure you'll support this, but you've already mentioned the Public Finance Live conference. There will be many students coming along, and it's a really great place to meet people at a similar stage in your career, but also people from all different kinds of public finance backgrounds, and to, you know, get that networking started. We'll do a little bit more of a pitch at the end, but just to mention that now. Moving on to the next question, we've got time for a couple more. So given the increasing number of S114 notices being issued by councils, what do you think are the key drivers behind this? And what is CIPFA's role and ours as finance officers in addressing these financial challenges?
So for those of you not working in councils, so Section 114 is a declaration by the Chief Finance Officer that they can't see a way of balancing the budgets into the future, so they stop all spend and have an emergency council meeting. Lots of other things, but that's essentially what it is. I think in the past that's been because too many councils have done outrageous things that did not follow the principles of good public financial management, whether they borrowed too much or they invested ridiculously and so on. And so they're well documented. I won't go into the details, but increasing numbers of organisations, not just councils, are finding that the increase in both volume and complexity of demand that they are facing is just not, and the consequent costs that flow from that are not keeping up with the funding that they have available. So that's why increasing numbers of councils are now at risk of that. I wrote to all chief finance officers in local government last week expressing my concerns about the future, but in effect giving a bit of air cover to say, I think our horizons have to get shorter. That if in the past we talked about 2 or 3 years of sustainability, I think the key focus is, can you get through next year? Because there's so much uncertainty coming with government reform and a spending review and so on. So a Chief Finance Officer's Section 25 statement, where they talk about the adequacy of reserves and so on, that should be setting out the risks and how we're going to navigate them, and finding ways that if things change in the future, how you're going to monitor that and then make another call if you need to. But it's a really tough one. How is CIPFA helping? Well, we talk to networks like this. I speak to individual 151 officers. I speak to groupings of 151 officers. I write to them all where necessary. Next month, big learning for me. So you learn throughout your career, and a big scary one. I'm going to give evidence to the Local Government Select Committee on future funding model. I've never done that before. I'm a bit excited, I'm a bit scared, but I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm going to learn about what it is to do that. So, but that will also be me advocating CIPFA's position, the sector's position, and so there's lots going on to try and address those challenges.
Fantastic, thanks, Owen. And moving on to our last question. So again, this is local government related, but I think probably has wider public sector implications. So regarding the government implementing backstops for local government audits, while understandable, there must be considerable concern over the ability of local government to borrow and maintain the trust of the public. So do you see borrowing and sources of funding becoming more difficult going forward?
So I think that the backstop was a necessary and painful step to just get out of the mess that we got into with audits not being done. And so what's needed now is for the whole sector to start building back to sort of more sort of mainstream assurance. I think we've got to make the whole sector attractive, both the auditing side of it and the accounting side of it. For those of you coming through, please don't come through thinking in your training, well, we don't have to do accounts anymore because they just get disclaimed. No, what we've been going through is exceptional, and we now need to get back to good normal reporting. The specific question, do I see it more difficult going forwards? Possibly. I also see it being a real complexity in reorganisation, that if you haven't got audited opening balances, that's going to make it hard, but we're going to have to find creative ways of making our way through that. So possibly in terms of borrowing, but I think some elements of borrowing should be made a bit harder anyway, because I think there's been some inappropriate borrowing in the past. So yeah, possibly, but yeah.
Great, thanks, Owen. Really interesting time for public sector finance in many ways. Owen has asked a question in the chat, which Lindy has helpfully answered. So if you want to find out more about the ICAW dual qualification, you can reach out to the CETC team. But I think with the end of our questions, we're going to wrap up the session. It's 1:26. So just to say a huge thank you to Owen for coming along for this and taking the time to speak to our students. This will be being posted online, so if you want to come back and access and hear all those tips again, you can. Massive thanks again also to Lindy for coming along, and to everyone in the CSN who has helped to organise this. Big thanks to Ben, who's been working in the background and making sure that our tech works and that the right people show on screen. We can't do it without the support of the whole team. Just to say before people head off that we've got another event coming up on the 17th of April, which CIPFA Thinks with Joan Pitt, which is going to be really, really interesting, a more angled view on CIPFA policy and finding out a bit more about that branch of CIPFA rather than the sort of wider. This has been a sort of broad spectrum approach, and then we're going to find out a bit more about their policy branch. Should be really interesting. The link is on our LinkedIn. And yeah, so really looking forward to that. Again, love to plug PF Live, which will be happening in June, 24th and 25th of June. Really great opportunity to meet students, to meet staff from CIPFA, to meet people from all kinds of different working backgrounds. And it's such a good learning opportunity. It's really good for your off the job too, if you're an apprentice. And it's going to be a lot of fun. The Student Network also runs the Student Social, and we also have our awards ceremony for the exam prizes. So it's really fun time and a really good opportunity for learning. You get 1 day free as a student. This will be in Birmingham, and if you have any concerns about being able to get to the conference financially, you can reach out to the Student Network at our email address, and we can look at whether or not we can help with that. So I think that's all from me. So Owen, if we could round off with just a final line from you.
Well, thank you. I'm really keen to keep listening and learning myself as I continue with my journey with CIPFA. So whether that's more of these sorts of sessions or at the sort of events you talk about, we're all in it together in terms of keeping CIPFA as the sort of vibrant thing it needs to be. So yeah, if you've got ideas from your experiences or otherwise, then please do just get in touch and let me know. But thank you for your time. Really enjoyed the session and very happy to do it anytime.
Fantastic. Thanks, Owen. Thanks, everyone.